Welcome to Cutoff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
It's Gen Genie.
Whatever.
I am Richard Castle, who's here to correct Julie. I'm her producer, and I am her co-host, her Gen Genie Jr.
Nice.
And her own living, walking, talking corrections corner.
Yep, that's you.
Even though I probably need some correction myself.
That's true. There's a trash truck outside.
Hello, trash
I'm just
truck.
saying,
There's also,
because we're not going to stop.
How interesting, there's a trash truck outside, and we're going to talk trash in here.
We never do that. What are you talking about?
Oh, I don't know. Hey, you know what? I just realized I forgot last week to thank you on air.
Oh.
Or not thank you. And actually,
What'd I do?
Thank you for being born. I wanted to mention and wish you a happy birthday belatedly on air.
Oh, yeah, that.
Yes. But thank you for being born, Julie.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being the lovely, swirling maelstrom of feminine superiority that you are.
Supremacy.
Supremacy.
So close.
Oh, damn. I knew I was going to. See, you're my own personal corrections corner.
See?
Supremacy.
We complement each
I like
other.
superiority, too.
Okay, so my birthday was lovely. I have to say, I basically spent the day by myself because my husband was out of town, my daughter's at college, and my son was up in his room doing whatever he does in his room.
Don't ask.
Don't ask. And we did go to dinner, though. But I'm really not into birthdays, and I'm especially not into my birthdays. And a lot of people think that's sad, but I'm okay with it.
Why are you not into your birthday? Is it about like getting older, or is it just like
I think
the attention of being like it's all about you day?
Well, I'd like that.
I know, that's why I'm trying to can't figure it out. I want to hear why.
So here's the thing. I think it's a mixture, and I can't figure out whether it's in this case which wins, nature or nurture. I want to say my instinct is nurture because my parents weren't into birthdays either. They just weren't big into celebrating.
They weren't like Jehovah's Witnesses or things like that.
No, they just didn't. And I think it's probably because they came from very poor backgrounds and grew up not having a lot of money to spend, therefore didn't pay much attention to birthdays. I don't know. They just never did. And my mom once told me, I've said this before, that she thought of my birthday more as June 3rd, which is the day they brought me home.
Which is kind of sweet.
Sure.
You say that like you don't believe it. I think
it's sweet. Yes, yes, it is sweet. But now the adoptee in me says, well, that's invalidating that I had a whole life before that.
Oh, yeah.
And that, of course, that isn't what I thought at the time because I was a child.
Right.
But I think that as adoptees, that's our subconscious.
I understand that. I mean, I really doubt that was the intention of it.
It was absolutely not the intention.
It was probably coming from a very sweet place of like, because
of course.
We want to celebrate the day that you came to us.
But they didn't celebrate June 3rd either.
Oh.
They just didn't celebrate.
All right.
Bottom line.
Yeah.
If
we were to celebrate your birthday, we'd celebrate it on the day that is not the day you were born, but the day that you came to us.
Right.
All right. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So, yes. So I think that I aren't big on birthdays.
You aren't big? I aren't.
I aren't?
I'm not.
I aren't big?
I aren't big? As your walking, talking corrections corner, and to save you from having to go back and do this next week, I'm going to tell you that I aren't is not grammatically correct.
I aren't big on birthdays.
Yes.
Oh, you're right.
I'm not. We aren't would be correct. We aren't big on birthdays in the plural, but I aren't.
Oh my gosh!
That's just
how did
wrong.
I do that?
I don't know. What else aren't you?
Not okay.
You can even say I ain't, and I would be like I ain't.
I would never
I know,
say
but like
that
that would
because
at least make
for some
sense.
reason I thought I aren't big on birthdays.
Because you know what? Ain't is a contraction
of aren't.
No, ain't
am
is
not.
of am not. I mean, it's not a real word, but in slang terms, it means I ain't. Like I ain't. Ain't
right.
nobody's business,
You're
right? It is not.
You know what? I am the grammar police most of the time.
I know, that's
and
what's so shocking
failed
about this.
Miserably right now.
Perhaps with your, encroaching age, you're forgetting your grammar.
And my grandma. Okay.
We're going to call Grandma who's got poor grandma.
I hate us. All right. So I am not big on birthdays.
Yes. Okay. We've
Of
established
myself
that.
and really of other people. I have to make an effort to be excited for other people's birthdays. I am going to admit that up front.
Yeah. Note to self, don't invite Julie to my surprise birthday party.
Oh, I love going to parties.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, whatever. So, and I think in my head, it's because, well, birthdays weren't a big deal to my parents, so that is instilled in me that it's not. So that's the nurture thing that I
Right.
I put it in. However, the nature part tells me that it's because I'm adopted. And my whole life was invalidated of where I came from.
Right.
It was a secret, and again, this is the system. This is what happened, and it's being changed now. But for a lot of us, this is a lot of us have issues on our birthdays.
I get that. Yeah, sure.
I didn't realize that. I thought it was just me until I started reading more and talking to more adoptees.
Because to you, perhaps, and I certainly don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would think if it was me, I would think, well, that was the day. It's a reminder of the day where my parents decided not to keep me, even if they didn't decide that day.
Yeah,
but
maybe
you know what I mean?
subconsciously that's it. But now I'm going back to the nurture thing. I watched all of my friends be celebrated by their families on their birthdays and, have big parties, and it was a big deal to them. Even now, I don't get it when adults throw themselves big parties and want special treatment around
Well, what
their
about
birthday.
for your kids? Did you have birthday parties for your kids, girl?
Yes.
So you celebrated their birthdays?
I did because I'm supposed to, but it is an effort.
Right.
I feel like it's instilled in me that birthdays aren't a big deal or shouldn't be a big
so
deal.
interesting.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what that's about. But I think subconsciously, because other people were being celebrated, my little adoptee Julie thought, well, they're not celebrating me because I'm not really theirs. And that is not to say that that is true.
Right.
That is to say that is where the adoptee mind goes.
But you also grew up with a brother, right?
Yep.
And did they didn't celebrate his birthday either?
No.
So
they didn't celebrate anybody's birthday.
Right. So it probably, I know what you're saying. You're
Yeah.
reading into it. It wasn't a conscious
Exactly.
thing.
I'm
Yeah.
reading into it. It was not a conscious thing, but that's, I think I'm just, because every year I think about why do I not care about this day?
Right.
And I think it's because I just don't expect it to be special.
And on a side note, we celebrate my dog's birthday on the date that we got him too, because I know he had a life before we got him because he was a rescue, but I have no idea what that is, and he doesn't seem to care much either as long as he gets treats.
Well,
And I'm not trying to conflate my dog with you. However, you're both adopted, so you have that in common.
We are both adopted, but you know what's interesting? I was talking to somebody about this the other day.
It's interesting that I treat him better than I treat you. Is that what you're saying?
It's not at all, or surprising.
Or warranted.
As adoptees, when we adopt dogs, we are given as much of their history that they know. As adoptees in the 60s and 70s, we weren't told anything. Our parents weren't told anything. We weren't allowed to know anything. So we know more about our dogs than we do about adopted people.
That's so interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just going to let that sit in the air for a bit. Okay.
Well, I also, because I didn't know what breed my dog was, I did the DNA test on him. I think I told you that.
Yes.
Because they told me a lie.
Well, they looked at him and guessed. That is not scientific at all.
I know. It wasn't like they were trying to cover up the
Yeah.
fact, we don't want him to know that he's part,
Pitbull.
No, he's not part pitbull.
I know he's
but
not
if he
part
were, I would love him just the same.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of pet parent I am.
Pet parent. I have a pet peeve about pet parents.
I know you do, but you also have a dog, so you understand.
I have 2 dogs.
You have 2 dogs, so you understand even more. 2 dogs and 2 children.
2 of everything.
And you probably celebrate the dogs' birthdays more than you do your children.
No way.
Really? No?
No. Well, it was my daughter's birthday. My daughter turned 21.
Oh, wow.
The day before me. Our birthdays are one day apart.
Well, happy birthday, Lily, if you're listening.
Happy birthday, Lilu. She's a grown up. She's all grows up.
That's crazy.
I know.
Oh, my God, 21. How did that happen?
In the blink of an eye.
Right?
I'm telling you.
Wow.
Talking about adopted kids.
Yes.
As we do often here. So there's a blog. There's a website called Scary Mommy, and somebody saw a blog on it that called "Teachers, Please Stop Assigning Family Tree Projects." In it, a mother of 4 adopted children explains how complicated this is for her family. Now, I've talked about this before. Mm-hmm. It was definitely complicated for me. I think every adoptee remembers that day that they're like, well, how do I do this? What do I lie? Or do I not do the assignment?
Yeah, do I do it with my family that I was adopted to, or do I try to do it? Or can I not do it because I don't know what my birth family was? Yeah,
right. So, and I at the time I went with because my mom was American, that my heritage was half American, half Australian. Mm-hmm. That was it. That's as far as I got.
I guess the good part of it is that you really can't get it wrong because they have no way of.
That is true. You can make it up.
I could make up anything at my family tree when I was, in 3rd grade, and no teacher was going to call me out on it, unless, of course, I said, my grandfather is,
that's such a great idea,
Mork from Ork or something. I would have been like, okay, Laverne and Shirley are my moms, my 2 moms.
My 2 moms.
Mork from Ork is my uncle, and like Fonzie is my,
Fonzie is
my
your
dad.
godfather. Okay. Yeah. So she says the same goes for foster families and numerous other family setups that are hard to put on paper. She says this can cause anxiety and make some children feel singled out or uncomfortable with the assignment being displayed on the wall. Now, I am not from the team of everybody gets a trophy.
Right.
I'm not that mom. I'm not the one that thinks that every kid gets, that all kids need to be equal. Some kids are better at sports than some kids. Some kids are better at the arts than some kids, what have you. So I don't think that assignment should go out the window. I think it should be expanded.
In what way?
In whatever way that somebody sees fit. What's a family to you?
Well, I mean, I think that's probably exactly right, especially today, and not just with adopted, but people have extended families, or you might be living with your aunt because perhaps your parents passed away, or who knows.
Yeah.
But whatever, like you said, whatever family unit that you are in, that you can.
Okay, that's true. Now, thinking further about that, now I'm going back into the genealogy ethnicity part of it.
Okay.
Because that's originally what the assignment was for. What am I made of? So what country? And, I guess I like it. I like that because it shows that everybody came from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And that we're all immigrants, ultimately. And I think that's an important concept that a lot of people don't even realize has to do with them.
It's funny because this was such a big, important thing to you. Obviously, when you remember the day they did this in school, and because I was not adopted, I have no recollection of this. Right. I mean, it sounds sort of familiar. Like, I guess we probably did it, but it was like any other assignment they gave us. It did not have that effect. And it's so fascinating to me now to realize that there could have been somebody in my class who was having that, like, oh my God moment. What do I do?
Right.
And it was nothing to me. If we even had it, we probably did, but I don't remember it at all.
Right, because why would you?
Right, because it didn't affect me in any way.
The kids that aren't adopted think that everybody is not adopted. They think that everybody knows their father and their mother, and that's where they came from. And
I mean, I suppose I could have had a moment of like, oh, what do I do? Because my parents were divorced, my mom had remarried. And do I, what?
You got to do both sides.
Right.
That's more work.
Oh my God.
That's another bad side effect of divorce. Your kids have to do a bigger family tree.
I used to tell my mom, Mom, I cry at all your weddings. She loved that. She loved that when I got mad at her, I would call her by all her last names.
I loved it.
I would literally say, list them.
I do that with friends that have been married several times now.
But it was even better because she had, of course, her maiden name, and she had a stage name because she was a performer as well. And, so she had a lot of names between the marriages and all the names. So it was always fun.
Yeah.
She would laugh.
Thank God.
Well, we had a good relationship. She knew that I was doing it as a joke, and she owned it, man. She wasn't trying to hide anything. My mom was not someone who kept secrets.
I should try that with my mother-in-law. I wonder if she'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I think you might want to feel her out before you do that.
Okay, Barbara, what do you think? That's all. I'm not going to go there. Okay. Should we take a break?
Let's do that.
All right.
If you're enjoying Cutoff Jeans, please subscribe, rate, and review. Now, back to Julie and me.
All right, we're back.
Hello.
Hello. Instead of a book nook, I'm going to do a doc talk. And that sounds brilliant, but I stole it from something else. So
Doc talk?
Doc talk. So sorry, Jimmy Pardo. I know he's not listening.
Are you going to talk about doctors?
No, I'm going to talk about documentary.
Oh, documentary film.
A documentary film.
Not a documentary book. Which,
I mean, isn't that just a nonfiction book?
yes, I think it is.
I don't think they're called documentary books.
Maybe it's a book about a documentary.
How to make a documentary.
There you go.
They're documenting documentaries.
Oh, my God. And we're documenting it now, and so on. And they told two friends, and so on.
Please
and
make
so
it end. Okay. Where is it? Okay, so I was on, actually, Paige, who is, I think, today's story time. She has a website called Akin to the Truth, which is also the name of her book. And she has lots of fun little just stories and things about the industry and things about adoption. And also she does reviews on books and movies. And one of them, I said, hey, I'm going to watch this. It sounds fascinating. So there's a film that I think it's on Vimeo, and it's called A Single Piece of Paper. It's by Jean A. Strauss. And it's about the when the state of Illinois finally opened access to adoptees to their original birth certificates.
Oh, wow. Okay. When did that happen?
A few years ago.
Okay.
I want to say
you have to watch the documentary
90s.
and find out.
You know what? I don't know why I didn't write it down, because I watched it, and it was one of the earlier ones. So they've been open for quite a while in Illinois, I believe. But it follows people who were adopted through the process of finally getting their birth certificates. It asks them why it's so important to have their birth certificate. Some of them already know who their biological families are,
right.
But there's something about that piece of paper.
Yeah, it's proof
that is yours.
Yeah.
That says you were born.
Yeah, and everybody gets one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody gets one.
Right.
Almost. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really, really well done, and great job, Jean Strauss. I'm sure you're listening. But yeah, check it out on Vimeo, guys. It's free. You don't even have to do you don't have to pay anything.
Well, that's even better.
Free is good, and it's about an hour long.
I got free queso the other night. I was very excited. I ordered some Mexican food to be delivered.
They put queso in
and there was a little order of a side order of queso, which is like this melted cheese
that
thing.
Just made your day.
And I was so excited about free queso. I'm like, I would never order queso, but the fact that it came and it was surprising and it was free, I never enjoyed queso more.
There's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
My mom would see a penny on the ground, and she would stop and pick it up, and her day was made.
Really?
Yes.
Well, not for the person who lost that penny.
You think they said, I'm missing a penny.
I guess I could turn it around and say, that poor restaurant is going to go out of business because they gave away free queso and it wasn't paid for. But
maybe it was queso day. Maybe it was National Cheese Day.
no, because you know what? Then I did order it a second time, and it didn't come, and I was
so
disappointed.
Said, where's my free queso?
I'm like, I am never going to order from them again. Not to take away from a single piece of paper.
A single piece of paper. Check it out, you guys.
It's free,
it's great.
Queso.
It's great. And it also sheds light on very few states still allow adoptees to have their original birth certificates, and that's a travesty. Guys, it's time to...
It's the 21st century,
people. It's time to move on and let people be complete people.
Everyone's, it pisses me off that somebody's always got to keep you down. The man. No, you know what it is? It's that idea that, we've got to keep somebody else's secret. And I'm sorry, it's time for that to be over.
No secrets, guys. It's a thing of the past.
Everybody deserves to know where they came from.
Thank you. The end. All right. Somebody asked, what with Y-DNA testing? I've touched on Y-DNA testing before. It's very complicated.
Yes.
The Y chromosome is something that only men have. Men pass from man to man to man. So it's useless for women unless they want a man in their family to test so that they can trace their paternal line all the way up. So like their brother.
Okay.
But there is something in the test that talks about genetic distance. And I've noticed when I've looked at my cousin's Y-DNA matches that I don't really know what I'm looking at, first off, except for a lot of Norwegian names. So that's how I know that he's Norwegian, that we come from. My third great-grandfather was Norwegian, like he said in his papers. But it also says that the different levels of testing, the different amount of markers that are tested, it says genetic distance. And instinctually to me, genetic distance means how many generations you're separated from that person. And that's not what it means in Y chromosome testing.
What does it mean?
I'm going to tell you.
Oh, good.
Okay, so genetic distance. There are two meanings. One is genetic distance is the number of differences or mutations between two sets of results.
Okay.
Should we let that sit there? A genetic distance of 0 means there are no differences in the results being compared against one another, i.e. an exact match. This is the meaning when comparing Y chromosome DNA or mitochondrial DNA as well. There you go. So basically, a genetic distance of 0 means that section of Y DNA is identical to that other section of Y DNA. And that means I think the closer the genetic distance, it would make sense that the better of a match it is.
Okay.
2, for autosomal DNA comparisons, genetic distance may refer to the size of a DNA segment. The genetic distance is the length of the segment in centimorgans.
Okay. I've got nothing to add to this.
I figured not. Actually, the Y one makes more sense to me now.
Oh, good.
The way that they put it. So it's distance means the number 1, 2, 3, 4 means how many differences or mutations there are that differentiate between those runs of DNA.
You know what I say about Y DNA?
Why? Because we like
yes,
it.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, because we want to know who our dad is.
Well, I know Y DNA.
That's how it goes,
I just don't know about Y DNA.
Y DNA.
It's like who's on first.
All right. Here's something I want to throw out there. We've been doing a series lately of weird things that happen in the womb. Not the room, the womb.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
What happens in the womb?
Well, from BBC News, the twins who have different dads. Semi-identical twins discovered. Professor Nicholas Fisk, who led the team that cared for the mother and twins at the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital in 2014, said the discovery was made through a routine pregnancy scan. It's the first time semi-identical twins have been identified during pregnancy. The first time mother was 28 at the time and had conceived naturally. Doctors said the case is being reported on in the New England Journal of Medicine. The mother's ultrasound at 6 weeks showed a single placenta and positioning of amniotic sacs that indicated she was expecting identical twins. However, an ultrasound at 14 weeks showed the twins were male and female, which is not possible.
It's not a popsicle?
It's not a popsicle for identical twins.
Oh, yeah.
How did it happen?
God, I have no idea.
Well, I'll tell you.
No, I mean, it must be God, because I have no idea.
God, that's the answer. Yes. Okay. Science, everybody. Okay. So identical or monozygotic twins occur when a single egg fertilized by a single sperm divides and makes two babies. These twins will be the same sex, share the same genes and physical features. Non-identical or dizygotic.
Fraternal?
Yep. Twins occur when two separate eggs are fertilized, each by a different sperm, and develop in the womb at the same time. These twins can be the same or different sexes and are no more likely than any brother or sister despite being born together. In this case of semi-identical twins or sesquizygotic twins.
I've never heard of this. All right. They came out driving a semi-truck, or at least that's how the mother reported it felt.
Yes, always.
Giving birth to twins. It felt like they were driving a semi through my legs. That's why I call them semi-identical twins.
It's like they were tap dancing. It's a whole other thing. Okay. In this case of the semi-identical or whatever that word is, twins, the egg is thought to have been fertilized simultaneously by two sperm before it divided. If one egg is fertilized by two sperm, it results in 3 sets of chromosomes rather than the standard 2. 1 from the mother and 2 from the father. And according to researchers, 3 sets of chromosomes are typically incompatible with life and embryos do not usually survive. The identity of the twins have not been revealed, and that's the end of that article.
Well, I mean, then that begs the question, are the twins healthy? Or do they have disabilities? Because, like, if it says that they were not compatible with life, then I wonder.
It says generally, but they seem to be fine.
So I wonder, like, how much identical are they? I mean,
well, they have 3 sets of chromosomes. So what happened? Basically, this woman had contact with 2 different sperms.
But this is from the
right.
same man and at the same time, right? Because it had
no, because maybe the same day. Oh. Sperm lives for, I think it's like 36 hours. I'm making that up. I don't know how long sperm lives. Please don't correct me. But it lives a certain amount of time, hours. And so you have the ability for that sperm to fertilize your egg for several hours. If you have 2 different partners, not necessarily at the same time, but within a day or so.
Right.
That's how that happens.
Or that she had sex with the same man twice within a 24-hour period or however long.
No, because that wouldn't be his sperm. They're semi-identical.
So it's not even from the... Oh.
Yes. It's from 2 separate donors, but they're not donors.
Now I'm going to have to go back and listen to this again because I'm totally, like, now I'm...
Oh, you didn't get that
really
part.
No, I didn't realize that it was from 2 different fathers.
Yes.
Okay.
That's how I read it anyway.
Well, that's probably true, but that's not what I got from it from when you were talking about it. I thought it was just sort of like whether you have identical twins, fraternal twins. You know, that it's usually just from one intercourse, right?
Right.
And that it's just whatever happens in the fertilization process. But the fact that these are from 2 different fathers.
Donors, right. It says the twins who have different dads.
No, donors.
They literally have different dads. Yeah. Crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's going to be one hell of a story to have to tell.
I mean, maybe. Who knows? Maybe I don't know what. Ooh. Let's not speculate on somebody's life. It's none of our business.
I know, but we said at the beginning we were going to do some trash talking, so let's talk about
Here
this.
Here it is.
I only have one more thing to add about this because we were talking about weird things that happen in the womb. Right after we did our discussion about chimerism.
Chimeras? Mm-hmm.
Yes. There was something in the news about a woman who gave birth to a baby that had another baby inside. Mm-hmm. Did you read? Yes. I don't think we talked about it.
I did not read it, but that is something that is a thing. In fact, the production of Sideshow that I did.
Yes. It all comes back to Sideshow.
It all comes back to Sideshow.
Yes.
There's something in Sideshow is a musical about sideshow freaks.
Yeah, and Siamese twins. Yes.
Or conjoined twins.
Oh my God. We have to be, we need to be woke about this, Julie.
Yes, indeed.
They're not Siamese.
Since I was one of them. So there's always something in the script called the sixth exhibit, which is some kind of known sideshow freak, air quotes, but that can be whatever that particular producer or director deems fit. Okay. And we had that. We had somebody build, we didn't, but the director had somebody build a suit for this actress, Alyssa, where she has like an arm and like part of a torso coming out of her stomach.
All right, like basket case.
Yes, but that's attached to her, and she like wears like an overcoat, and then for when people pay money, she opens the coat and so they can see.
Again, more disturbing facts. But I thought what was so interesting was about this was that baby. I mean, they had to remove the baby within the baby because it was not alive.
No, how much of the baby was in the baby?
Enough so they could tell it was another baby, but I mean, it wasn't intact. It wasn't alive. It wasn't. I want to say that there was an eye. There was a.
I've got to look this one up.
Yeah, but it was really fascinating and apparently pretty rare, but not unheard of. Yeah, and it was right after we did this discussion, and so it was on my mind, and I thought, this is so fascinating. And again, there goes my guilt again. Not only did I absorb my twin, but they had to like remove him from me.
You're so absorbent.
Why did I live? Yeah, because I told you, my grandmother said, you know how he absorbs.
I love that so very much. In my head, to me, I feel like twins are at like, you can start out if an egg splits, you can start out by being like starting to separate, and in that particular case, you never separate, and one is not viable, but you absorb part of it.
Right.
With conjoined twins, they almost separated.
Yeah.
But that last bit didn't. That just became clear to me that must be how that happens.
There's so many things that can happen, in a pregnancy.
Yeah.
That, good, bad, indifferent.
Yeah.
That we don't even know about. Mm-hmm. And we only see the results,
Right.
On that note.
Let's break.
Thank you for listening to Cutoff Cheese, the new podcast starring Julie Dixon-Jackson.
Okay, guys, it is story time. I'm here all by myself to introduce it, so don't think that Richard has suddenly turned mute. Okay, today's and also next week's story time is Paige Adams Strickland, who is an adoptee, an author, and an adoptee advocate. She has a website and a blog called Akin to the Truth, also a Facebook page, and she has written a book and a follow-up book called Akin to the Truth, a memoir of adoption and identity, and the second one is After the Truth. It's quite remarkable, and she's a fun person to talk to. So go ahead and have a listen to part one, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, guys, it's story time. Today we have the lovely Paige Adams Strickland as our guest and story time teller. Paige, welcome.
Thank you.
So Paige came to my attention actually a few years ago. She has, is it a blog?
Well, I have a blog. I do. Yeah, it's called Akin to the Truth.
Okay. Yes. And
also,
the
books.
You wrote a book. That's the,
yes.
That's what we're going to talk about. Yes. So you wrote a book. It's called Akin to the Truth. What's the whole title?
Right. Akin to the Truth, a memoir of adoption and identity, and then there's a sequel book to that, After the Truth.
Yay. Okay, so full disclosure, I've not read the entire book, but chapter 1 alone pulled me in. And
that's good. That's a good writer thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. There were so many things that you said that you referenced that felt so familiar to me that were really specific too. Like you said something about being cross-eyed and pigeon-toed.
Yes.
I was too.
Yeah.
And I've met other adoptees who were cross-eyed. I wonder if that's a thing.
I wonder, well, I was told, and, again, I've got facts from 1961, 62, but I was told because I was in foster care and spent a lot of time in playpens and cribs, more than having all that freedom of movement. In today's world, we call it tummy time and all these other things where the kids are playing free on the floor. I don't think they did a whole lot of that in most foster care settings, especially if there were lots of kids involved.
How old were you when you were adopted?
I was 13 months.
Oh, right.
So they said my motor skills were lacking because of having been in foster care and probably not having had all that freedom of movement.
That makes sense.
That other babies get. So a foster baby that possibly could be a trend among any of us. Yeah, so I had lousy eye-hand coordination and motor skills, fine motor skills, and even some gross motor skills. I was delayed at pretty much doing all those kind of little physical milestone things.
I never thought about that as that was why I had weird, the lazy eye and the pigeon toes.
Yeah. And there's a genetic factor. What I found out after doing research and things, and when I found about my birth mother, she apparently had that lazy eye thing throughout her whole life.
Oh.
So there could be a muscle structure or some genetic component to that. And I'm looking at my new baby granddaughter. She's got a little tad of that, but nothing that concerns me.
Right.
I mean, I outgrew it, I fully expect she would outgrow it too.
Oh, I was also going to say, at some point, I remember you mentioned the word blob. Did one of your parents use that as a descriptive?
I don't know that my parents did. That's more me.
Okay, my parents did.
Oh, wow. That's funny.
They said, I remember them saying that I was more like a blob when they brought me home. Like I would just lay there and just content.
Well, if we didn't have crawling skills and moving skills like we developmentally at different stages should have had and could have had, then we're blobs, until we figure it all out.
Well, my thinking is that I didn't have a whole lot of my needs responded to as a baby in the baby's home. So I learned early on that crying wasn't going to get me anywhere. Yeah, I think that's probably what that was about. And so I was just kind of like, well, here I am.
Well, I was just going to say there's no record on any kind of early behavior of me, whether or not I was a crier kid or not. There's no way of knowing. There weren't good records then.
Right. What inspired you to write the book? Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood and what led to you deciding to write the book?
Well, the real reason when I started writing the book, it was after I had connected/reconnected with my birth father and his family, and my kids started asking questions, and they were at tween age, if you know what I mean, like 6th grade and 3rd, 4th grade, and they were just getting curious and just starting to put things together. They knew certain things that were kind of givens in their life, and then they were just getting awareness of where babies come from and how things happen, and kind of like, I don't know how to put it politically correctly, what a whoops baby is.
Right.
I
don't think that's completely politically incorrect.
Yeah. And they were just starting to come to that age where they were thinking about those things. And so is that about this person? Is that this? And then they were, well, exactly, Mom, how are we related?
Oh, interesting.
So it started out, I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to write all this stuff down, and I'm going to start from pretty much when I was born or what I remember, and go from there and piece together all the relatives, and then add in everybody as they show up in my life, kind of thing.
Okay.
So that my kids could read it and understand this is it. Okay, when mom talks about so or whatever, that's what she's related to. That's the connection. Both of them were very curious. And again, this was probably sparked by when my birth father reconnected with me and we met all of his family. All of a sudden, we had a landslide of more relatives. And the kids actually went through that reunion with me, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, for real young kids, and they barely really remember it, but I remember it, and I remember seeing the looks on their faces.
Yeah.
So that was pretty awesome. So that was the thing that really sparked the writing was I got this stuff down on paper because my kids are trying to figure this out, and I just wanted it out. And the project, it's kind of like planning a wedding or planning.
Yes.
It gets bigger and bigger, and then there's more people, and it gets bigger, and then you have to add this in, and you can't leave that person out, and it just goes on and on, and it just gets bigger, and that's how it turned into a book.
Right.
And I had taken not for actual college credit, but like I guess you call it auditing, audit credit or whatever, writing class from somebody here locally at University of Cincinnati, and took in some stuff that I'd written so far. And, there were times where we got to share things we wrote, and she'd give us little assignments and, other things. And, okay, I think I got something here. I can keep going with this. Okay. And I'd come home charged every week after being in that class. I think it was about a 6-week class in the summer. And again, it was like $100 and it was like once a week or something. And it was a great class. And actually the lady that was running that class turned out to be my editor. So when you see the editor, I don't know if you have a print copy or an e-copy of the book, but if you see Wendy Hart Beckman on there, I just plugged my editor.
Atta girl. Was your journey complete by the time you started writing the book?
I would say 95% complete in that at that point I had not only knew who both my birth parents were and all my siblings, but I had met them.
Okay.
There were still peripheral relatives and other information coming in to find out later on, but I had enough. Okay. That, again, with my first motivating, how do I explain this to my kids?
Yes.
And I raised my kids. They always knew I was adopted. They always knew we had all these relatives. In their minds, it didn't make a difference. They saw no borderlines between adopted and not adopted. They grew up with the same people the whole time. So, they didn't know the difference, even though they knew I was adopted.
I have a brother that is also adopted, and he didn't tell his children or the mothers of his children
wow.
that he was adopted.
Well, it's like the truth is like the X-Files. The truth is out there.
Oh, yes, indeed. And it's in your genes. That's what I tell everybody.
That's it.
Yeah.
And, DNA means do not argue because
that's good.
It's out there, and there are ways to find things out. So there is no point in covering up stuff or lying because all it takes is less than $100 to find out the truth.
So what about, speaking of DNA, have you had any experience with consumer DNA testing?
I have. I've taken the Ancestry one. I've not taken any of the others.
Okay.
I knew all my biological people. By the time those tests became widely available and everybody and their neighbors starts taking them, I was like, my first thought was, I know who everybody is. Why do I want to spend $75 or $100 on sale or $75 on sale for one of those? I know everything. So I put it off because I kind of knew everything. My sister, one of my sisters, from my birth mother's side, she had been living with the mystery her whole life of who was her dad. There was the guy who raised her, and he said he was her dad, but she just sort of had this little we all have that little inner voice.
Oh, yeah.
Adoptees or not, we have an inner voice sometimes. And my sister that I'm talking about was never adopted. She was a kept kid because she was born before I was. And we're about 18 months apart.
Oh, wow.
And my birth mother couldn't manage and raise two of us, especially at that age, it being a newborn and a 18-month-old.
Could we have a little sidebar about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Right now, tell me about when you discovered that. Can you talk me through that? How that felt and how it feels now?
To have found
to know that you had an older sibling that was
a sister.
Yeah. And you were given away.
Yeah. Well, when I acquired my original birth certificate, and I was born in Ohio in 1961, adopted in 62. Mm-hmm. The birth certificates at the time were cut off as far as freedom of information in 1964. So I got lucky because I'm an old adoptee. Okay. Oh. Now they reopened in 2015. All adoptees can get that information now, but I was born prior to all of that. And I didn't know it growing up, and I didn't know it until I watched a TV talk show
that you had access to.
One day, and it was about adoption, and we, old school 80s, we videotaped it. and yeah,
probably like Oprah or
exactly.
Yeah.
It was a local one here in town.
Okay.
Nobody would probably know who the guy was that was running the show. It was a guy named Ira Joe Fisher. I think he's in New York City now.
Oh, okay.
If he's still working.
We probably have some listeners in Ohio, so.
Yeah, you never know, right? And anyway, he and his partner on the show had adoptees on one day, and and it was a talk show, but nothing sensational, nothing like what goes on now on some of these talk shows.
Yeah.
But it'd be very boring for people today.
Yes, definitely.
Because there was nothing like the baby daddy walking in and wanting to take.
Yeah, there was no.
Nothing like that was going on. But anyway, they brought in a social worker, they brought in a couple other people, they brought in an adopted person, and they interviewed all these people on the show, and they brought in somebody who was kind of, I'd call her an advocate with Cub, and she set up a local Cub Concerned United Birth Parents support group, but it was open to anybody in the triad.
Okay.
Which now I guess the going word is constellation, but at the time the word was triad.
Oh, I haven't heard constellation.
Adoptees, birth parents, and adoptive parents, and then constellation would add in social workers, therapists, teachers, anybody else that might be dealing, half relatives, in-law relatives, anybody touched by adoption.
Oh, okay.
So, that's, like for everything, there's a new word for it.
Of course.
So, anyway, back to the show. They interviewed all these people, and part of what came out of that was, well, people in Ohio born before 1964 have access to their records. People born after 1964 do not, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, So I wasn't even going to watch the show. My husband encouraged me to tape it. He was like, it's about adoption. Why don't you just tape it? And at the time, I was 25, turning 26, and I was like, I have no interest in this. I was in total denial. I wouldn't necessarily call it the fog. I would just call it the denial. Like, I didn't want to be adopted. I hated everything about adoption. It was a stupid A word. I didn't want to talk about it. If my husband brought it up, I'd be like, shut up.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I was like, and by the way, your mom and your dad can never bring this up. And if they do, you are in so much trouble. I mean, that's how I kind of was about it back in my 20s. So you
kept it close to the vest.
I did.
Okay.
I did. I was as secretive as with the best of them. I was as secretive as secretive families. It just was something in my head that it was a shame, that it was a bad thing, that it was a thing that made me deficient and inadequate. And it didn't matter how good or nice or wonderful or how many opportunities I had growing up, which, I had a good growing up for the most part, but it was that adoption thing. Yeah. I don't know. The scarlet letter A that's only the start of it.
Yeah. It kind of makes sense. Kids that are not adopted, if they have like little, failures or what have you, it's what happens. But I think as adoptees, we go straight to, this is because I'm adopted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the last thing I needed was another reason for a bully type kid to bully me.
Indeed.
So the best thing was keep my mouth shut. I'm not even going to tell my best friend because I don't want to have to force my best friend to ever have to keep a secret like that. So it's best that they don't know in the first place.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, nobody outside my household, I made sure nobody knew. Now, maybe if some teachers knew or something, I don't know. But it never got out socially till I met my husband. He was the first peer I'd told in many, many, many years.
Wow.
And I was kind of like, well, if it's like, I kind of like see a future coming with this guy. Yeah. So this is not something that future potential spouses should be lying about to each other or hiding from each other.
Yeah.
So I think he needs to know about this.
But this is something that affects the long term because
it's
if
genetic,
you have children with him, yes.
Right, exactly.
Of
Someday having kids and stuff. Yeah. So, and he was cool. He was totally, his response, it's in the book, but his response was like, well, that's cool. I got 2 cousins that are adopted, no biggie. Yeah. And I was like, okay, you think it's no biggie. I think it's a hugie. Yeah. So no, And I don't like discussing it, but it's something I needed to tell you. And part of it, too, in the back of my head was, this is like a guy test. If he's an ass about it, dump.
Right.
If he's cool about it, I got the right guy.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
So, obviously he passed.
Now let's go back
where were we?
Where we were. I'm sorry. I took you off on a sidebar.
That's okay.
Okay, so that's the end of part 1 of my conversation with Paige Adams Strickland. She has lots of insight and lots of experience as an adoptee and an advocate and an author, of course. So we'll hear the second part of that conversation next week. Hey, we're out of here. Richard, you can find at his website, richardcastle.com. It's all about his music and his musicals that he writes, which are delightful. And you can find him on Twitter at Castle Songs. You can find me on Twitter at Jules Jackson with 2 O's. The podcast is on Twitter at Cutoff Jeans Pod. And on Facebook, you can find us, the Cutoff Jeans Podcast, or I think it's just Cutoff Jeans Podcast. Okay, guys. So we will talk to you next week. Have a good week and can't wait to see you again. Always remember, the truth is in your jeans.